mayor of the town of Christiansburg and to appoint the police chief, Mark Sisson, that we appointed. I'm extremely proud that a good majority of your town council members are here, as is our town manager, our assistant town manager, and if you're here, raise your hand, but I've seen most of them. Right, thank you. We appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words today, and I'll try to be brief as I share most of the sentiments of those who have spoken before me. I'm proud to work with the Dialogue on Race. It has done our community an immense service. We meet, they meet, we're all active, and they go over these events, and I will tell you this, I have spent 72 years as a resident of the town of Christiansburg, and I can assure you, things are much better today than they were 70 years ago as far as the race relations go. I can assure you that, and I think most of us here can. But it is the work of these committees and the work of these groups that call together and call for the needs of our citizens, all of our citizens, to be taken care of. I think that all of the sessions that we have gone through with the Dialogue on Race, that 9 or 10 years worth, Penny, I think, in that area. There's not many, if any, that I have missed, or most of my council members have missed, and most of our police officers have worked on. So it is important to us. It is extremely important that we work together as a community, that we are here to serve and protect our citizens, all of our citizens, and that is the one reason that we're here today. I don't agree with what happened in Minnesota, in Louisville, or in Alabama. I do not agree with that at all. And for that, we apologize. But what I'm here today to thank you all, this crowd, this group, is thank you for coming before us and making your thoughts and statements known peacefully. That is the ultimate compliment to Mr. Floyd, Ms. Taylor, Ms. and Mr. Armour, who've gone before you, that you have done this in a professional, in an orderly, and in a very civic-minded, that you have not caused damage, and hopefully you will not cause damage to the other citizens and the business owners that our police officers, our county deputies, are sworn to protect. So with that, I thank you very much and appreciate you coming.
Thank you, Mayor. And like Mayor Barber said, when it comes to our summits, especially in the wintertime, he is always there listening to those conversations of the citizens of the county. Now I would like to bring up the chair of our county supervisors, Steve Fiskowski.
I don't know why everybody has such a hard time with my name. It's only 11 letters. They're all jumbled up and thrown together, but Fijalkowski. Thank you, Penny, for inviting me to be here today. The purpose of my presence is to support the Dialogue on Race. The county has been a partner in it, not just financially, but we have several board members that are actively involved in it. Without dialogue, how are we ever going to understand each other, and how are we ever going to move forward? So it's a great program. The Board of Supervisors is also very proud of our involvement in the ACE program, giving educational opportunities to our citizens. It's hopefully is going to pay off. As many of the chiefs have mentioned, recruiting is difficult. we need good people of integrity to take up these jobs, because we have to have law and order, and we have to have people that we can all trust. And speaking as a retired police officer, I would have to reflect some of the things that have been mentioned here today. Anthony, when you mentioned the fact that you had been busy the day of the incident in Minneapolis, I too was, and somebody had asked me, have you seen that video? And I immediately went to the TV, and I couldn't believe my eyes. Same kind of emotions. Number one, how could this possibly happen? There were so many other ways that it could have been handled, and then just be angry that you have individuals that probably have no business being in police work and should have been basically rooted out and long before anything violent happened. And I don't know the complete history of that officer, but I am sure there was incidents that probably arose to the level of he's in the wrong profession. But we have to have good people. Not to say that there's going to be times of disagreement. There's going to be incidents that all need to be investigated. And if something can be saved out of it, then we should do that. But if not, then we need to let it go. The prayer that Chief Brown had mentioned earlier talked about forgiveness. And I always have looked at it, if God can forgive me for things I've done, then I certainly can forgive others for things that they have done. But as we move forward, I definitely wanted to be here too to also show my support for you all. I know you all are dealing with anger and disappointment and probably bewilderment as how something like this could be happening in our country. And hopefully more and more groups like Dialogue on Race will maybe spring up in other areas. I think of how lucky we are, how fortunate we are to live in such a peaceful county with two great towns. Sometimes it seems like all these things are so far away, but we don't want them ever to come here. And I am very grateful that we have police chiefs and the sheriff that are willing to work at it and to keep their hand on the pulse of the county to try to eliminate these things and to try to get everybody to a point of understanding. And I think that's where we all need to be at. I appreciate my fellow supervisors for coming here today. County administrator is here. We also want you to know that we support you. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. I don't have a mask on because I have some asthma and allergies. A mask is not good. I have a shield, but then you can hear me. So I would like to ask Karen Jones with the NAACP. She is the political action chair to say a few words.
I stand with you all today on behalf of the Montgomery County, Bradford City, Floyd County branch of the NAACP. Our president, Deborah Travis, sends her regrets she's unable to be here with us today. But I want to share a message with you all that we are done dying. This is our national call to action to eradicate the injustices we see across the country. But I'm here to tell you today that I am done. I am done dying because George Floyd could have been my dad. Ahmaud Arbery could have been my nephew, and Breonna Taylor could have been my sister. Our community is not immune to the injustices we see across this nation and across our Commonwealth. We today are fighting two viruses, COVID-19 and racism. The working relationship, as you all can see in our community, amongst our leaders, elected officials, and law enforcement will continue and is strong. The NAACP in this branch will continue to work towards tearing down the walls of systematic racism by ensuring that policies and legislations that maintain the system are changed. The policies and legislation that exist in our community and beyond. Our branch will continue to foster these relationships to do the hard work, and we call on the community and our elected officials to join us in this effort. The NAACP was founded by Black and white, based in large part to the lynchings that were happening all across the South. Today I stand on the shoulders of W.E.B. Du Bois, I.W. Wells, and countless others in this work. I am encouraged by what I see and hear today. I am encouraged by what we witnessed in Blacksburg and Radford last night in our peaceful protest against what we are seeing happening. But the work, the hard work must and will continue. And these conversations have to be followed up by strong action.
Absolutely agree with everything that you said. We have Delegate Chris Hurst with us today, and if he would like to say a couple words, we'd love to have him.
Good afternoon. I stand here while we're dealing with allergies, while we're dealing with a virus that is killing millions of people around the world. And so we're all maybe feeling a little bit in the back of our throat, a little scratchy. And it starts to be this element of privilege that Mayor Hager-Smith talked about, where I might feel a little scratchy in the back of my throat, but I cannot imagine being a person of color in this country, having screamed out for years and years the names of those who were killed unnecessarily in this country. Names recently like Michael Brown and Trayvon Martin and Tamir Rice. And just this spring alone, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, screaming those names out so often and so loud, it almost makes it so that you want to say, I can't breathe. And I think being choked on a lack of action that you've seen from elected officials like me in Richmond and in Washington, D.C. is enough to be as damaging and a threat to our lives as any virus that has ever come on these shores before. You know, when a virus takes hold and starts to multiply, it's our immune system that then goes and fights, and it creates an inflammatory response. And oftentimes, I have seen in professional experience and now in this new role, that our law enforcement is that inflammatory response to the injustices, to the viruses that plague our great country. And when we see that inflammatory response, we must appropriately hold those accountable who are in charge of defending and preserving and serving. But at the same time, we must understand that this virus is not just police brutality. It is also about the denial of people for fair housing, the denial of people of fair wage, the denial of people of the ability to go out and operate freely in this country based off the color of their skin. That is the virus. And what we're seeing now is the response. Oftentimes in political activism, you talk about a call to action. And what we're seeing now is that call to act, to finally end the institutional racism that we see here in this Commonwealth and across the country. The dialogue on race now for a decade has, as law enforcement, one of its focus groups, but it is not the only one that brings them together to have that dialogue. In Richmond, we have been working hard this year to try and change some of those institutional policies for the better. We decriminalized marijuana use. We were able to increase the felony larceny threshold. We put millions of dollars into our affordable housing trust fund. And yet it still is not nearly enough to be able to prevent more people like George and Brianna and Ahmaud from being killed on our streets every single day. So what we need to do is go back to Richmond and have a full and exhaustive examination of use of force in this Commonwealth to make sure that we don't have any of these cases show up here in the great Commonwealth of Virginia. We need to continue to advocate to make sure that we have criminal justice reform that doesn't criminalize somebody for merely being black and alive. And so what is our role here in this great community, which now has time and time again come and organized and protested the injustices we see here and across the country? What do we have to do? Well, just like whenever you hear a great sermon or you adopt a new religion, there is an element of evangelism that we all need to do. To go out and maintain good working relationships here, but to go out and to start showing how it can be done in other areas, by having those difficult conversations, by breaking down those barriers. And then at the end of the day, when we go out and we try and share what's doing well here, we go home and we look in the mirror. And we understand that part of what makes our community so great is that unfortunate truth that we just simply aren't in proximity to some of the areas where it's not so great. That maybe our community doesn't look the same as other communities where it's not so great. And that is not something we should be ashamed of. It's not something that we should work to counteract, but it is something we need to fundamentally acknowledge about ourselves and what we are here in the New River Valley, which is that our privilege engenders a lot of great things for us by living here, but it also must be something that is met with equal responsibility to make our lives better for other people. And we have to do it here in the New River Valley and do it all over Virginia and all over the country. We can get that air back. We can put oxygen back into that democracy. We can breathe again as a Commonwealth and a country, but only if we are able to try and give that aid. That is our job. That is our charge. And that is our mission. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you.
we should do about it. However, to make sure that you pay at least some attention to me, I'm not going to go through this whole list. I'm just going to key on 2 or 3, because there are things we can do. Okay. One I would discuss, if I had more time, is in these cases of blacks being killed, as George Floyd and others, we have a problem with the prosecutors. Okay, I'm going to argue the same thing I argue when I'm told that we have these rogue cops. I defend rogue cops, saying they only do the policies and practices of their area. And so the prosecutors do what one would suspect they would do. These are people who work day to day with these police officers, and they're involved with bringing charges against other citizens. And it is just as likely that a prosecutor will not prosecute a person who's a police officer as they will. So one of the things that, if I had more time to talk about, I could go into more detail. we must insist that when we have some of these questionable killings, that it's automatically a problem for the state, as my son, an attorney, argues, it should be the federal government immediately. Not if things get so bad. So but let me just move on. That's not what I'm going to discuss. Okay. If I had time, I would go through a list of privileges that police have in the state constitution here in Virginia that some of us don't think they should have. But I can't discuss that today. I'm going to provide other venues to discuss these things. So I want to go to something else that we must change this idea of the evaluation of life and who is important and who is not, or who is less important. So as I was telling some others earlier, we need a groundswell of discussions about it. I see what I'm seeing just an extension of what Delegate Hurst was talking about. We can't assume that the delegates and senators and others in Richmond will do the right things unless we push them. I've spent my entire adult life making that argument. Too many of us think if we say something, then the politicians, if they are of the right mind, they will do it. Politicians do what they're forced to do. And so we must force them to do that. So we must have a groundswell of this discussion. Discuss with your neighbors, discuss with your friends and your organizations. And to me, today, the most important thing is to have some discussions about overturning Graham v. Connor. Okay? We must have it overturned. Most likely in the courts, but there's sometimes a possibility of this being done by legislation. I'm not sure. We need a groundswell there. The groundswell can happen in your homes with your discussions about it. And if you start that discussion, you're not convinced, please contact me and I will try to convince you. Okay. And some of you sitting there, standing there, may think this is a tall task. If you think this is impossible, let me tell you another story. You remember the shooting of the black guy in North Charleston who had been stopped because of some problem with his car. And he's running away, and you've seen the video, and the police officer shoots him in the back several times. How many people have seen that video? Good. Okay. That was illegal. In 1980, that was legal. How did it become illegal? Because black folks have been arguing and pushing and praying and fussing about changing these laws and changing some of these practices until one black family sued all the way to the Supreme Court, and they were the parents of this little boy, Garner, who had been shot in the back. In the case I mentioned, Garner v. Tennessee. That case overturned the fleeing felon rule. Before 1985, a police officer could shoot a person running away from him in the back with impunity. After 1985, that became a lot more difficult until 1989. Okay. So, a horrible law, and believe it or not, and I'm going to say this slowly because it's going to be almost unbelievable, but we had half again as many black folks killed in 1980 as we have today, before they abolished the fleeing felon law. So, because of the work of black folks and their allies, we finally pushed, and the Supreme Court ruled with us in 1985. So it is possible. So please don't think these things are impossible. There's nothing in the Supreme Court written in stone. Everything can be changed. So I'm going to ask you to push some of these issues and be aware of them so that we can get the change that we want. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Reed, and thank everyone who spoke today and spoke in support of the outrageous killing of sex offenders, in the disbelief of seeing George Floyd murdered. It is difficult for some people to speak to that because there are folks who look at them and go, why would you say that was wrong? I'm sure he did something wrong. He had to have done something wrong. Well, in the world that we live in with all the cameras and everything, the man did nothing wrong but be black. Nothing but be black. I wake up every morning as a mother, a grandmother, a sister, a cousin, a friend, and as a black person in this country. And I worry. I wait. I wonder when I'm going to get that phone call. When someone's going to knock on the door and say, someone that I love has been killed for no other reason than being black, and someone didn't like what they said, where they were at, or what they were doing. I live with that every day. Yesterday, my son called me from Colorado and said, are you okay? Because he heard that this was going to be happening today. And on Facebook, there were folks who didn't like what was going to be happening today. There were folks who were making comments that all the rioting and the destruction that was going on was horrible and terrible, and why were we doing that? Well, I want you to understand, I agree. It's horrible and terrible, but why we're doing that is because every damn day we wake up with the frustration that I can't live in this country and not worry what may happen to me or what may not happen to me because of the color of my skin.